books. All right, some images you see and you just know you hate the people and you hate everything about them, and you know, like, you couldn't even listen to 5 minutes of the show. It would just be too much. It would, insufferable is the word. Insufferable twats is probably the phrase I'm looking for. So keep in mind, if you were living out in some village somewhere and you had, you know, a few channels and it was all just woke programming from Amazon, HBO, and Disney, and you were just seeing this kind of, this like Batwoman CW level of shows, you know, kind of lower budget and real clunky woke shows, and that was all you had access to, you think it was fine. I mean, it's got sets, it's got some budget, it's got you know, bells and whistles to it. You would think it was cool. It was something to watch that was better than, you know, more entertaining than just reading a book, if that was your choice of entertainment. But we have decades of prior shows that are out, available on, you know, on hard copy. People still have VHSs that they've ripped to their hard drives. We've got all the physical medium, and then there's so many like legitimate streaming sites, and obviously there's a ton of illegitimate streaming sites. If you're using like if you have a VPN and a couple of 5 terabyte external hard drives, you never need to watch anything new ever again. So we have this universe of this back catalog. I mean, you want to go back and watch stuff like, you know, Dean Martin and Sophia Loren type of stuff. There's decades of those, like those people, like Cary Grant. I was like Charade in 1963. It came across the radar, and it was like, you look at Cary Grant and those type of people, Humphrey Bogart. Those guys were making movies almost every year, and they were fan-frickin-tastic. It's kind of a little slice of life back, you know, 50, 60 years ago. You never have to watch the modern stuff again. And the thing is, this lady, Leslie Headland, is giving this interview, and she says, she was talking something like, you know, the old films were, she goes, the new ones, we want to start including like pan, non-binary, otherkin representation. And she goes, oh yeah, it's like we're leaving money on the table by not catering to this audience. And that goes on the presupposition that you are maintaining your core audience and also growing a new audience. Now, most people hear that kind of thing and they look at you and they go, you're going to lose the core audience. That, like, anyone could tell, any 300-pound Star Wars, Star Trek nerd can tell you, like, oh yeah, you're just going to lose the core audience. And those are the guys who should be working for you. Those are the guys who should be your second in command, your personal assistants that you bounce ideas off of. And you ask them, like, yeah, what happens if we do this? And goes, oh, you're gonna lose core audience. Oh, okay. We're not gonna grow. No. You just lose core audience. So it's like they did that with comics. They got rid of the male audience, the male young audience from like 10 to, I don't know, however old people were still buying or collecting comics, to try to get this female audience. And the female audience never really materialized, but they definitely lost the male audience. And they go, oh, well, we're kind of like, they were the wrong audience. Oh, you mean the people who supported your industry for like the past 50 years? Yeah, they were the wrong demographic. I mean, the only demographic I would care about is the demographic who pays me. I don't care the color of your skin or your ideology. It's like, oh, you buying the product? Then you're my demographic. You're the person, you're the customer. You're not a fan of Star Wars. You're a customer, or you were a customer of Star Wars. Anyway, she gave that interview a year ago, and it's the most insane. Like any reporter who's holding the mic should have said, wait, I mean, you should have asked that very reasonable question. It's like, oh, you think you're going to maintain, well, if we don't maintain the core audience, that means they're istophobic. Yeah, but you're not in the same room with them where you can use pressure or social media pressure. They're anonymous people who are either going to pay for the Disney fee or not. You can't pressure them with social pressure to say, if you don't like these POC BLT otherkins, you're istophobic. Like, most people are starting to realize that that's not a racism. It's not a real word. It's just it's the way these Bolsheviks manipulate you. It's more like, I guess I was going to say Scientology, but the better example is what it is. It's Bolshevism. It's Marxism, communist manipulation. It's like, these are very bad people. And you can't pressure them if they're in their living room to pay the $15 a month for Disney. They're just going to unsub when they look at Disney and realize, like, oh yeah, this isn't what I signed on for. This isn't, if you're watching Star Wars, you go, oh yeah, this isn't Star Wars. Star Wars is 77 Star Wars. This is something else. So people have this like huge back catalog of thousands of movies where you never need to watch anything ever again. There's no need to watch something that's so mediocre, like the equivalent of modern Star Wars or any modern type of stuff, when it's so freaking obviously bad. Why would you pay for that? I mean, why would you here's the thing is, one, why would you pay for it? Two, obviously you can go online, you can watch stuff for free. it's not even worth watching for free. I mean, these industries are in the weird position of, you saw what happened to Netflix. They lost like they suspected, they go, oh, well, we suspected we were going to lose 1 million subscribers or something and $1 billion. It's like, okay, well, why didn't you just make better shows so you grow the audience instead of losing the audience? And he goes, we're not going to do that. We're rarefying the audience. We're purifying the audience. We're getting rid of the wrong thinkers, the wreckers of progress. Okay, I mean, see how well that turns out for you over the next decade. Did I say click the links? Click the links, and you'll have clicked the links, and it will take you to places. So, black, lesbian, non-binary, intersexual, feminist. I just wanted to say that string of words and use that as a title. The video doesn't really even matter because Star Wars sucks. Like, you got to know that by now. All this stuff is over. You're never going to see a 77 Star Wars type of film ever again. And before you just throw that, like, ignore that and kind of move on, think about that. Think of 77 Star Wars: A New Hope. Think of the cast, and now think, oh, if they made something like that today, could they do it? Yes, you could do it if you were willing to ignore Twitter. Will they do it? No major studio would do something like 77 Star Wars. By something like 77 Star Wars, they mean by swapping out all the original characters for, the United Colors of Bennington approach. So nobody is going to watch this show. What's the Venn diagram for POC BLT shaved side of the head Star Wars fans? It's it's almost non-existent. So it doesn't matter that it's not going to do well. This is part of the globalist humiliation ritual. This isn't about money. They will burn money to destroy stuff that you enjoy. This is a globalist religious ritual. How much more openly do they need to tell you that they don't want your money, these shows aren't for you, and they're definitely not for your kids? All these companies have been absolutely corrupted by parasites, or to be fair, some of them kind of started this way, but they've kind of been taking off the mask. Having a streaming service for your kids, that's probably abuse. Not because the shows are all just cultural Marxism, but just because they're so friggin' mediocre. So, all that generation of Hollywood, all that's over. If you're red pilled, it doesn't matter, from sports to films to streaming shows. If you support it, then you're kind of supporting this globalist agenda. And TV has always been subversive, but people have been asleep a long time on TV until recently. But it was good and bad, like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. And it just slowly got worse and worse. But now, post 2016, it's straight from the pages of the Frankfurt School. They're doing everything they can to subvert and destroy. It's kind of their base level programming when they start taking off the mask, and it's like, do they live with Rowdy Piper? That movie, it just gets better and better every time I rewatch it every few years, because it's like, oh, how prescient what's his face was. The guy, wasn't the guy who did Frey? I forget the guy's name, and I know film aficionados are like, how could you forget the director of They Live? Anyway, so the brainwashing actually started in 1963 once TVs were saturated in the homes. I read this article on it. It's fascinating. They started introducing subversive topics. I think it was like I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched, and you think, what, the shows are so harmless? No, there's a whole psychological science behind it. It was so subtle at first that, because I'm saying that the TV shifted from, like, in the 1950s was like the family, the nuclear family, the nationalism, to the 60s, and it started to get slowly subversive. Are you saying giving women agency is subversive? Yes. Yes. And I can say that 9 minutes into the video. And also, I know there's like no female listen. There might be one female listening to this. Most people didn't notice the subversion, but some people did, to their credit. They tried to warn people. Like, we're trying to warn people right now. Half the time I think we sound crazy, but not as much anymore. Like, you talk to people now about a lot of this stuff that's kind of out there, and you see a nod of recognition or kind of a look in their eyes and go, yeah, I kind of see where you're going with that. Like, I wouldn't have thought that way 5-10 years ago, but it's like people are slowly kind of waking up to this. And, one thing is, you start to think of all the movies they made even 5 years ago and think about which ones they couldn't make now just because of one scene in there. There's like almost all of them. I mean, all the stuff that was really funny, you couldn't make now. And I know people, they always bring up who's that Mel Brooks film, the cowboy movie, as some example of comedy that was so great. Go back and watch that movie again and look at who the protagonists and the antagonists are, and look at who they're laughing at and not they're laughing who they're not laughing with. That movie wasn't what you thought it was. Mel Brooks was laughing at you, wasn't laughing with you. A lot of those movies are, even stuff like Fight Club or Pulp Fiction. You go back and rewatch that from a different perspective. It's like, oh, they've been subtly doing this for a long, long time. Anyway, so with this, you got a POC BLT girl with a shaved head. What message are they trying to send, and who is their target audience? In one version of the comic, it's High Republic, there are two versions of it. Men were the antagonists. That was the general rule, that women were plucky and brave. In the other, it was a blonde-haired, green-eyed kid out of Austrian central casting who was the antagonist, and the POC girl was the protagonist. I guess she's playing that role. And that is basically every comic and show now. It's German man bad, essentially. It's so heavy-handed that even normies are calling it anti-white propaganda. The insane commercials that you've seen prop up over the past 5 or 10 years have woken a lot of people up. Like, the commercials have really woken people up. So this will do as well as, I don't know, what was that Mags Visaggio show? Vagrant Queen? Not well at all. But the thing is, the difference is that Disney can burn money. It doesn't matter to them. They can keep it on the air. They don't have to cancel it. So when people think Star Wars, they're thinking the original trilogy and the prequels. They don't think Disney. Disney is where Star Wars went to die. What's Disney? POC BLT, non-binary furry otherkin, who will call you racist on Twitter to deflect from their crappy films. That seems to be the game model now. Like, if you don't like they use POCs as shields, and then when people on Twitter talk about the shows, immediately you're an incel as the phobe. Well, I mean, that doesn't get people to buy your streaming service. So the Star Wars vibe is Han, Luke, Leia, and then the prequels would be Padme, Qui-Gon, and Vader. That was the story universe. If it didn't have a United Colors of Bennington ad from 1990 vibe to it, well, too bad. If you want to change it to where it's unrecognizable, why didn't you just create a new sci-fi show from the ground up? Because, as the Lord of the Rings pointed out, parasites can't create. They tried with stuff like Vagrant Queen, and which is cancer. Immediately, people looked at that and go, "Oh yeah, nobody wants this kind of woke propaganda," because the Venn diagrams of the audience are too small. For that was the example, she was a POC BLT who was in a fuzz bumping relationship with an alien girl on the show. It's like you had a male lead right there. None of that makes sense. That you're refining your audience down to smaller and smaller audiences. I mean, the next step is to make them trans, and it's like, okay, well, then the audience is almost non-existent for that. And then the undercurrent is how incompetent blonde men are, and how super smart POC BLTs are. Because it's like, once you've seen this a dozen times, it's too much. It becomes trite, hackneyed, and overused. So Star Wars, it did not have a lot of black actors in it. Now, what the woke don't understand is that is okay. It's okay to have actors be whoever is acting in the film, whatever story universe you want to set. You don't need to follow it up with an excuse. That was the universe that Lucas built. You don't improve it by getting rid of one tribe for another. It makes it worse, because it's not the original universe that was so massively successful. Now, that's not politically correct, but it's the truth. It's not istophobic to want to see the original story universe. Why would it be? Anyway, I know you're not going to watch this. In fact, probably not going to be watching Disney ever again, because there's Odyssey, BitChute, Gap TV, YouTube. There's so much. Like, we have options now, and we have options that are free. You don't have to pay $15 a month, or you start adding up these subscription services. You're like, oh, I pay $50 a month for this stuff. It's like, none of it's worth it. In fact, not only that, but I'm supporting very, very bad people, which you should not be supporting any of these companies. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, check me out, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.